can we start off with what we're hearing from Carter Worth? Do you think the pharmaceutical sector, is it a quote-unquote deep value play? I don't know how you exactly explain the parameters there, but do you think this is a value trade right now, at least?
So we actually think that pharma is probably not set up to overperform the market, at least in the first half of this year. On the European side, with Novo being the big name over here, we downgraded European pharma to neutral actually back in January. And the reason for that was twofold. One, I think, look, RFK Jr. just got in charge of HHS. He was confirmed. And so I think, from a healthcare policy perspective, there's a lot of open questions. He just said yesterday that they're going to have a hearing on childhood vaccines. What does this mean for vaccines players? We don't know. I think that people have largely brushed off the tariff news, which is the positive for the sector. These companies have very, very high gross margins. But the other open question is, how do the obesity names fare this year? Novo's actually had a really tough year to date. Lilly's done well. So I think still a lot of questions on obesity as we get into 2025.
Well, Emily, let me ask you. We've got to talk about tariffs. The sector is shaking off the tariff threat. I mean, a 25% tariffs on 24% tariffs on pharmaceuticals being imported that could go even higher, according to what the president said. How can you just shake that off? One of the big issues here in the U.S. is the problem with high drug prices. This could only add to those prices, right?
Yeah, I think part of it is due to the fact that, gross margin for these companies can be like 80+%. And then, in terms of the mechanics of how these tariffs are going to actually work, like Novo Nordisk, for example, they make the chemicals that go into semaglutide in Denmark, but they do a lot of the putting the drug into the pens in the U.S. So how much of that is actually going to have a tariff on it? It's still kind of a big open question, but I think that manufacturing costs are generally pretty low for these companies. Okay. So, I was a little nervous yesterday to see if these stocks were going to react, but they actually just traded pretty in line.
All right, I just want to bottom line this. So you think the drug makers, they're going to absorb the additional cost of the tariffs?
Yeah, I think that it'll be very, very manageable for them. And actually, we're getting to the tail end of earnings. Didn't really come up much on calls over this quarter.
All right, very interesting. Well, speaking of Novo Nordisk that you were just talking about right now, I want to bring in our Angelica Peebles. She sat down with Eli Lilly's chief scientific officer to get his take on what's next for weight loss and, of course, for Lilly. Angelica, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning, Frank. Yeah, I had to ask Lilly's top scientist, Dan Skowronski, about the debate people are having right now around what it will take for new obesity drugs to compete with Lilly's Zepbound and Novo's Wegovy. He sees two main opportunities: drugs that are easier to use, like pills, and medicines that make people lose more weight. Now, on the second point, the other debate people are having is how much weight loss do we really need to see on top of what the current drugs have? So Zepbound delivers more than 20%, a number that he sees benefiting the most people. More potent drugs like Lilly's own retatrutide might bring that up to 25% or more, but he sees that market being smaller. So what's he most excited about in obesity? He wants to see what other health conditions GLP-1s can treat.
This has probably been the most amazing thing I've seen in my lifetime as a scientist and a physician. Just the multitude of different diseases that could potentially benefit. The way we're learning about this is mainly from patients telling us, I've been on your drug and I've seen this benefit that was surprising.
Outside of obesity, Skowronski wants to take advantage of Lilly's success to take the, quote, big swings, things like Alzheimer's prevention, ALS, chronic pain, and hearing loss. And Lilly's investing heavily in gene therapy while other companies are just passing on that space. And a company like Lilly can make these bets. Its market cap is around $820 billion, and only 5 years ago it was $120 billion.
Right now, Lilly's the biggest healthcare company in the world, probably the biggest healthcare company in the world ever. We have an obligation. Investors have given us that vote of confidence. We see that as an obligation to invest in some of these big problems that are hiding in plain sight to try and make a difference for the health of humanity.
Now, we'll have to see if these bets pay off and if Lilly's investors are actually on board with that plan. And you can get more from my interview on CNBC.com later today. Frank.
Angelica, thank you very much. We want to bring Emily Field back into the conversation. Emily, I just want to get your reaction to some of Angelica's reporting.
Oh, yeah. The points that she brought up and also in her interview with Dan are exactly two of the biggest thing that healthcare investors are going to be watching. The first one is on pills, right? So these weight loss drugs today are a once-a-week injection. Lilly's next generation pill, it's called orforglipron. We're going to be finding out pivotal results for both type 2 diabetes and obesity in the summer and in the fall. And so that will be very insightful in terms of how big can pills be? And then the second point, they're going to have to treat more than just weight loss to get particularly insurers in the United States to pay for them. We know they're very expensive. And the second big thing on the catalyst watch for investors is going to be the first trial in Alzheimer's. That's a trial from Novo Nordisk. It's called Evoke. And we're expecting to see that in the second half of this year.